You so much. Good to see you joining us now. Former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus. Good to see you again, Morgan. Thanks for joining us. So what do you make of this? President Biden yesterday at the White House corrected himself that his executive action, putting illegal alien spouses on a path to citizenship, had, quote, passed Congress. He then corrected that. But, you know, there's no court precedent cited here, no law, no court cases. We're doing this end run around Congress. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says this is illegal, unconstitutional. Of course, is going to strike it down, just as they struck down Obama's actions. Where do you come down on this?
Well, I agree with Governor Abbott, and I think he's right. I also think, you know, there's so many crass political moves that are being made in an election year. First of all, let's step back and say, how did we get here? We got here because 3.5 years ago, President Biden and his team bragged that they were going to get rid of basically all of the Trump-era policies to control our southern border, where President Trump had largely stemmed the flow of illegal migration, built a border wall, and did other things. Worked with Mexico, worked with the Northern Triangle countries, with things like asylum cooperation agreements in order to stop it. We took the threat of an undefended and open border quite seriously. The Biden administration has never taken that threat seriously. It's only after you see literal criminals and murderers from other countries coming into this country and murdering Americans. We saw God forbid, the sexual assault of the 13-year-old in the New York City park. You know, you start to hear more and more of these stories, a mother of 5 being murdered, a nursing student being murdered, all because of Joe Biden's, again, undefended and open southern border, that you have millions of people pouring into this country. Suddenly, in an election year, this becomes a top 3 polling concern in a general election. Liz, that never happens, right? Normally, immigration is certainly something that is debated heavily in the Republican primary. It's rarely a general election issue. It only became a general election issue because suddenly everybody woke up and realized 10 million people coming to this country illegally, guess what? It could actually have ramifications.
You know, Morgan, let's get your reaction to MSNBC's Joy Reid and Democrat Premier Jayapal claiming the coverage of the rape. What do you make of this? They said the coverage of the rape and sexual assault of a 13-year-old child in New York City is, quote, fear-mongering, when the New York Times, the BBC, ABC News, CBS, and more have been covering it. So it's fear-mongering? Here's the issue, Morgan. You've talked a lot about this. The U.S. is pro-immigration. It's not about being anti-immigration.
Of course not.
This is a U.S. crime problem. This is not a blue or red issue. The problem is the Biden White House refuses to acknowledge literally letting in more than 10 million, including gotaways, without being vetted. We're talking killers, murderers, rapists. Crime is slamming U.S. minority and immigrant communities in New York, L.A., Detroit, and Chicago.
You know, it doesn't surprise me that these women took the position that you just talked about, that they would minimize the rape of a teenage girl, you know, a girl who's probably barely even hit puberty. They also minimized the rape and the torture of Jewish women, of Israeli women in Israel. So it doesn't surprise me that they have done this because they also don't believe all women. They also minimize the importance of Israeli and Jewish women from October 7th and their rapes. So does it surprise me? No, it doesn't. But it should horrify, I think, women around this country because of the pernicious behavior of some of these criminals entering this country that appears to be specifically targeting women. That's what's incredibly scary. Listen, I was just at the southern border last month. I was in Yuma, Arizona, and I was there about 2 o'clock in the morning, Liz, at the border. The first 3 or 4 guys, men in line, were young Chinese men. We asked them where they were from. The next 3 guys were from Homs, Syria. Young men, spoke to us in perfect English. They had all been dropped off by the cartels. There were women and children in the line as well, but at the beginning of the line, the first people that we encountered were not economic migrants from Latin America. They were from China and from Syria.
Yes, and that's in violation of the law.
Yeah.
U.S. law doesn't allow for economic migrants.
Right.
It's truly, and that's what the problem is, because women and children who were persecuted under asylum laws get pushed to the back of the line as our immigration courts are clogged. That's the problem with Biden's border collapse. But we got, you know, House Republicans and other top Republicans say, Do you agree that this was a ploy to try to get out the Hispanic vote? But Vox is reporting polling shows independents and moderate voters, including Latino voters, are against what Biden did. They are for deportations. They're for a border wall. They support migrants coming here legally. Even the immigrants who did that legally, they waited in line and they did it the right way. What Biden is doing is unconstitutional and unfair, is what we're hearing.
Well, and I certainly agree with that as well. We all want legal immigration. Listen, I want the best and the brightest to come to America, be educated here, and stay here and work and become Americans. And let's keep that talent in the United States. But that is a very different conversation than the one what we're having at the southern border. And of course, Liz, what is very concerning to me is that we are now catching ISIS-K affiliates crossing this border illegally. The FBI, I've been screaming about this all year. The FBI director has testified multiple times in front of Congress saying there are blinking and flashing red lights. We are at risk for another 9/11 because of this open and undefended border.
Morgan Ortagus, thanks for joining us tonight. Still ahead, Congress